And now that I am your president, America will expose the crimes of the Castro regime and stand with the Cuban people in their struggle for freedom.
The way Trump talked today, with a single stroke of his pen, he was undoing years of coddling of the Cuban regime.
I am canceling the last administration's completely one-sided deal with Cuba.
Watching every moment of that political performance was Mark Entwistle. He's a former Canadian ambassador to Cuba and consultant for those looking to do business there.
Bingo.
Thank you, darling. Oh, do I love you too.
I'm a little bit speechless. You could have been back in a spaceship or a time traveler to 15, 20 years ago, and it would have been the same stuff. I mean, the bottom line of what they're doing is clamping down and tightening up on the travel of Americans. That's the core of it. You know, when you strip everything away, that was the essential core of what President Obama did, to allow individual Americans to go and visit Cuba on what they call in American parlance self-directed travel.
Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba.
When Obama normalized relations with Cuba, that meant the embassy was reopened. Restrictions on banking and communications were lifted, but it was travel that mattered most. The first U.S. cruise ship in more than 50 years, the first U.S. flight, all of it tourism that sort of skirted around an embargo that never actually got lifted.
The embargo is going to end. When? I can't be entirely sure.
Tourism is illegal. Tourism to Cuba is illegal in the United States. It always has been. It continues to be. It was illegal during the Obama years. But he liberalized the number of categories Americans could do, and by self-declaring, they could go. They took a more liberal approach to interpreting what educational travel was all about. So you had a very large increase in the number of Americans.
So Americans started showing up, and they brought cash.
This private B&B culture in Cuba was really driven by the growth in the number of Americans, frankly. They hire private tour guides, they use private taxis, et cetera, et cetera. So there was a great kind of trickle down through the Cuban economy at kind of a street level.
The Rolling Stones rolled in for a free concert. Chanel staged a fashion show, and just last month, the country's first five-star hotel opened its doors. But now what? Trump's rules will still let cruise ships and planes into Cuba, but who's going to be on board? The turnaround on Cuba today won't surprise some Cubans. Back in 2015, when the ice between the U.S. and Cuba was just starting to melt, I sat down in Havana with Ramses, a prominent Cuban political cartoonist. He saw the diplomacy then as a high-wire act.
We must really be careful.
His most recent cartoon doesn't exactly ooze optimism.
Cuban people are looking for solutions. That's why I draw this Trump burning the speech about relations in Cuba with the remainings of the Statue of Liberty. It's more of the same.
The truth is, Obama's policy shift didn't change that much in Cuba. Oddly, it may have even helped the repressive government.
The Cuban state, the Cuban government, clearly would have made some economic benefit from increased U.S. travel, without question.
Yeah, we have a luxury hotel in Havana. The cruisers come more frequently, but all of this benefit that comes to for the government. The government take all of this money. You don't see that the people can, develop other options.
But if the point of isolating Cuba for all those decades before was to promote human rights, well, that was a clear failure.
The government are accustomed to deal with this kind of politics. Hardline won't solve nothing.
Trump's rollback may thrill the crowds of Cuban exiles in Miami today, but it's not popular with large swaths of the U.S.
U.S. business remains very interested in this. They're always looking for new business. It's 11.5 million people, 90 miles away, and they'll go back at it. And they'll go through this again in another cycle.
Polling shows nearly 3/4 of Americans favor not just diplomatic relations with Cuba, but an end to the embargo. And that includes more than 60% of Republicans. Ramsey's old cartoon about the High Wire Act still works.
Because the moment we are living in right now, it's the answer for this first cartoon I made. Maybe the guy hang in the tightrope.
And that suspense is building because Raul Castro, Fidel's brother and successor as Cuba's leader, won't be around for much longer.
Castro will step down as president literally next year.
This is what I think very, very historical news for Cuba, because we haven't presidential elections since, I don't know, more than 60 years.
That's why Ramsey's drew a second cartoon.
A Cuba looking for something, but is blind by it, even by the nationalism.
No matter how cold relations with the U.S. get, Cuba may not be as frozen in time as it appears. Its future may be now in its own hands.
They become quite accustomed to living without the United States, frankly. My own view, it doesn't matter one whit. Truly, at the end of the day, what an American administration does.